studio. I'm Marianne Schummer Gaw, and this is my studio in Harrison Township, Michigan. This is my wall easel system. This consists of vertical boards that have been spaced in a variety of widths apart, along with a dowel system and a number of different holes at different lengths of this board. It gives me flexibility to paint on smaller paintings and larger paintings, allow paintings to dry, work on multiple pieces at the same time. It's worked great and I love it. One of the newest additions to the studio is this phantom wall screen. It's fantastic. It lets so much natural light in. In this cabinet next to my wall easel is where I keep my acrylic paints. I love to use golden heavy body acrylics along with Nova colors. I have everything organized by colorway, and I also have tubed paints that I use. These are organized by cool tones and then the warmer tones in the bottom drawer. I also have my black and white acrylics in here, along with some gesso, and some of the high flow golden as well. And this cabinet is where all the fun is. These are most of my mark making tools: Posco pens of all different colors, woody Stabilos, marabou crayons, oil pastels, graphite, colored pencils. These are Faber-Castell Pit Pastel pencils. I just got these recently and I love them. They're super vibrant. Love to use them on watercolor paper and also for mark making. And Derwent graphite blocks when I want things to look a little bit messier in my underpaintings. In this cabinet I have all of my brushes for watercolors, acrylics, some that I use for oil and cold wax, larger brushes. I also have rubber brushes that I love to use, and then these very blunt brushes with short bristles. I love the marks that they make. They do a great job blending too. Some bigger brushes, different shape brushes I use for different things. These brushes are for blending. They do a great job, especially with acrylic. These are just some studio mats that I use, especially when I want to check composition. I like to use these. They're super helpful. These are all my mediums: heavy gels, gesso, matte mediums. I also have airbrush paints in the top of this cabinet. In that middle row are all the fun kid supplies that I have when my grandnephews come to visit me. That's a piece of backer board I use for encaustic painting. It's heat resistant and protects my surfaces. The birch boards not only protect my work surfaces, but they also allow me to create additional workspaces when I have joiners in my studio. I purchased these racks from Amazon. They're on wheels and are movable, and this is where I store my finished acrylic artwork pieces. This is a basket with recyclable materials that I use to create textures on my work surfaces. I also have extra cardboard and board for my watercolors. These plastic placemats come in handy for a number of things in the studio as well. In this cabinet I have extra supplies and scrapers, palette knives. Oliver's helping me find things in here as well. Recyclable plates and bowls if I want to mix things. Foam brushes, which I use when I do acrylics quite a bit. I also have a brayer. Can't remember what that's called, but I use it for jelly plate work sometimes, and that tape is for watercolor when I want to tape it down to the board if I'm going to work on it over a number of days. There are pin or needle bottles and additional little bowls and pipettes, scrapers and large chip brushes, large foam brushes. rollers, speedball rollers, wallpaper rollers, bowl scrapers. I use all those on my cold wax and oil primarily. These are just different hole punches, different sizes, different shapes. Sometimes I use that with collage. This box is full of alcohol inks, which the colors aren't archival, but sometimes I use those to create different textures within acrylic paints. More tape for my watercolor. I have some shells I haven't done anything with yet, but I'll figure out something to do with that at some point. Maybe embed them in some encaustic. And these are watercolor inks or concentrated watercolor. I found these great chairs on Amazon. They adjust not only for my desk area, but also for my work island, which I can stand and work at as well. They're super comfortable. In this cabinet, I keep all of my paper and journals. There's watercolor paper, different types of tissue paper, rice paper, you name it. I have this bank of drawers in my work island, which I just love. Staying organized really helps my art practice. This is my watercolor drawer. You saw pastels. That bottom drawer were stencils that I used to create texture in my pieces. I also have gouache paint in this drawer, along with masking fluid, porcelain dishes for my watercolors, along with porcelain palettes. These are all my inks. These are organized by color. There's Indian inks in here, along with acrylic inks and inks that I use when I'm doing watercolors and applying ink work either on top or underneath. I like to use a really dark permanent black ink. This drawer is full of my pan pastels, R&F and Sennelier oil sticks. This is an R&F blender, and this medium helps them dry a bit more quickly. These are pan pastels. They're a little bit different than pastel sticks in terms of the ability to mix these pan pastels together. So you can take a red pan pastel with a yellow and make a bit of an orange out of it. And you can mix them right on the paper as well. These are all the applicators for those pan pastels. Blending tools. R&F sticks. They're really juicy and creamy on the canvas or board. I love to use these with my cold wax and oil pieces that I do as well. And then this top drawer is all of my oil paints. I have paints from Winsor Newton, Lucas Studio, Gamblin, and primarily I use cold wax with these oil paints, or I use these oil paints to make my own colors for encaustic artwork. On the other side of the island, in this cabinet, I have some of my encaustic burners and plates, but primarily this houses all of my collage papers, which I have organized by color, pinks and reds, greens, and those are too deep. Many of these papers I make myself. I also use a gel press or just papers that I have as I'm painting. I'll clean off my brushes on papers. I always love how those turn out. Different types of tissue paper, rice paper. And then you'll see I also have a container with just one map in it right now, but I love to use pieces of map and collage in my paintings. This is National Geographic pages. I love the vibrant colors. Those are really fun and inspirational to use. And then here's other magazine pages that I really gravitate toward, whether it's the patterns or the color combinations. Just fun papers to use. And sometimes not much of those papers show up in my artwork, but they certainly help me get inspired and get rid of white canvas or board in the beginning of my bottom layers or underpainting. This is my primary work surface. You'll also see that's an air purifier. I bought that from Amazon. I think it's really important that your air is being purified when you work with things like encaustic and oil paints. I have electronics, a speaker, I listen to music as I work. The jar with the shells and rocks are from my travels, so I find it very inspirational. There's Oliver's treat jar in the center. That wooden slab I got from my mother-in-law. I just love it. It's perfect to hold kind of the tools that I'm using at the time. And in this cabinet, this is all of my encaustic materials. And it does smell like beeswax. It smells so good. These are just some of the examples of the paints. These are R&F primarily. And again, that is made up of oil paint and beeswax. They come mixed together. And then these are the paints that I've mixed myself. And after I'm done using them, they just harden up. I leave the brushes right in, and then I can heat them up on the encaustic plate to use them again next time. That's my white. I use quite a bit of white, and then these are all my brushes. Those are pans that I use when I want to make new colors, and some smaller brushes when I want to put in details. This is soy wax. I use this to clean encaustic and oil paints off of my encaustic hot plates and surfaces. My thermometers that I use on my plates to make sure I get to the right temperature, which is between 195 and 200. This is Damar resin, which actually comes from a tree. I get this from R&F. And what you do to make encaustic medium is mix that with beeswax. And that Damar resin, sometimes you have to strain it because there's little insect legs and pieces in the resin. It's a really fun material to use though. These are just additional tins that I have, so when I want to create a new color, I mix it up in the tin and then have a place to store it. Those are just wood chips that I use for practice or to test colors. This is encaustic. This is the beeswax. I also get this from R&F. You'll see there's shellac there as well. Sometimes I put shellac on my pieces and light that on fire. It makes a really interesting effect. I have molds to make my own coloring, and this is how the encaustic medium comes from R&F. While I don't do pottery professionally, we do love to work with pottery here at home with friends and family, my husband and I both. This is our kiln. I use that countertop to protect it and use that surface when we're not using the kiln. You see a catastrophe on that shelf where glaze overflowed. It needs to be ground off. But it's a pretty good sized kiln. We have lots of different glazes. We have an inventory, so when we have friends and family work with clay with us, they know what glazes we have. This is another area of our studio that has our safety equipment. When I'm using a sander, I use that mask. Electronics. GoPros, recording equipment, camera lenses, lighting. This cabinet has washi tape, different types of tape that I use, whether it's with watercolor or in some of my other artwork. And then some of the larger papers, parchment paper, Bristol paper, watercolor papers. I keep those larger papers here. There's some additional acrylic paints and house paint for some of the mural work that I do. This is back to our pottery, and this is how we keep clay out of our sinks. It's a drainage system that we use. And then this is a slab roller that we recently added to the studio that really makes things much easier when you're doing hand building. Some of our clay and slip in those jars. And then these are ready to fire so that we can have test tiles for some of the new glazes. Lastly, I have this old leather set of drawers that has some additional miscellaneous things. This is paper that I made last year. At the end of the season, I took some of our flowers and greenery and dyed the paper. It actually turned out great. I'll use this at some point as probably collage material. It was a really fun project to do that. These are some of the tags and our business cards. They're all hand painted. And then this is just overhead storage where we keep extra clay and canvas, boards, canvas rolls, etc. Thanks so much for checking out our studio. Please like and subscribe to catch more content with Oliver and I. Thank you.